Jordan, you started trading at 16 years old while you were still in high school and door dashing to fund your accounts. You ended up blowing up 12 different accounts before finally realizing that the key to success wasn't just strategy. It was taking the emotion out of the trade. And now you've built a massive following and launched an automated platform that executes trades for you. So my question is, why did you initially decide to start day trading at 16 while the rest of your classmates were probably out partying?
Yeah, it's a funny story. So at 16, I got my first job at Bed Bath and Beyond. It actually kind of became a meme stock I started to trade towards like a few years ago. But yeah, it was like a dead like store. You just find like betting sheets and stuff. It was like crap. But it was my first job. It was my first work experience. So I go there, and the first shift they throw me out there. It's a 3-hour shift. And all they say is, all right, you're just gonna go out there, just make sure everything looks nice. I wasn't behind the register, just like fix it. If something falls, pick it up. If a customer's there, help them. If you don't know how to help them, just like radio us. Maybe 4 people walked in the store the entire 3-hour shift. I was walking around doing nothing, and typically you think like, okay, that's the best job ever. You get paid to do nothing, but it sucks. It's like it literally felt like a year just being in there for 3 hours, and that was my first work experience. So I thought in my head, I'm like, there's absolutely no way I could do this for 8 hours, let alone every day for the rest of my life, right? So that initially, like right after that shift, I went home and I looked up online. I'm like, it's a funny saying, but like how to get rich quick as a teenager online. It's like, and of course, like all these scams pop up and like all the get rich quick things that aren't actually get rich quick. But I did come across a video of this penny stock trader. It was a YouTube video, and he was day trading. And I saw it, and he made like 2 grand in 2 minutes. And I was in my head like, this guy just made what I'll make in a month in 2 minutes, and all he did was sit there, just click buttons on his computer. It's like out of thin air. And I'm out here like picking crap off the ground, like walking around a store, like just going like this, doing nothing, making $12 an hour. So that's initially what got me to trading. I'm like, if I can just figure this out, then nothing else matters.
I find it extremely interesting that after one shift, you kind of committed to this new identity of this is not going to be the rest of my life. I cannot do this. So when you started looking at trading and were so interested that you could make $2,000 in 2 minutes, what were the initial steps you took to start learning about trading?
So I started watching a lot more YouTube videos. I basically learned everything I know on YouTube. I also found Twitter. I didn't find Twitter till later, but a lot of YouTube videos is what I learned. And there were a few limitations to get started. Like one of them was that you needed, in order to day trade, there's something called the PDT rule. It means you need to have at least 25 grand in your account. If you want to take more than like 3-day trades in a 5-day period. They're actually just put in a law to get rid of that next month, which is huge. But for past decades, whatever, like that was always the case. And I didn't have any money at the time, right? So I originally knew, and also I wasn't even 18. You have to be 18 to trade. But there's things called like custodial accounts. So I knew I could trade like under my mom or my dad, and I could make it work. But for me to get over the PDT rule was the issue, because like I wanted day trade. I don't want to sit here and hold a stock for 3 weeks. It's going to take me forever to make money, right? So I was like, okay, there's got to be a way to get over this. And there's something called offshore brokers. So the PDT rule only applies to the US. So if you are trading outside the US, that rule doesn't apply. So I found an offshore broker it was like CMAG. It was like Capital Markets Elite Group or something, based out of the Trinidad and Tobago. And I had to use my mom as a account because I was under 18 to like use her name, but I would trade under it. And I remember somehow I convinced my mom, because it was my money, right? And I had like $1,000 at the time, so like she didn't care. But I convinced her to do it. I remember we go to the bank, because we had like a local branch, right? So you couldn't like send a wire transfer online. We couldn't like deposit money in the broker. And we go to the bank and we're talking with the teller and we're like, hey, we're looking to do a wire transfer. And just imagine like some 16-year-old kid and his mom. The 16-year-old's like, yeah, I want to send $1,000 offshore account, Trinidad Tobago, so I can like trade money with it. And she's like, okay, did you like did you confirm? Like, she was like in her head, like, this is 100% a scam, right? So my mom ended up, and she basically convinced my mom to be like, I should do this. Like, this is 100% a scam. So we went back, and I basically had to call them and like verbally confirm them with an email printed out. Went back and finally was able to wire the money. So a little bit of a hassle, but we made it work.
That's so interesting. I can only imagine a 16-year-old kid sitting in the local bank trying to convince the teller that this is what we should be doing. But I'm curious about something that I found interesting. Like Colton alluded to, it took one shift for you to go home and look up how to get rich quick. And I think every 16-year-old looks that up at some point. And a lot of them ended up going down the trading route. I know I did. I know Colton spent time trading as well. But I'm curious, where do you think that mindset actually formed to not only after one shift want to go figure out a different path to a different life, and also just kind of accept that, like, okay, this does work. Someone's doing it, so I can do it too.
Everything stemmed from just a massive hatred of the job, and in just my head, like it was the worst. I was like, there's no way I could do this, or any human could do this. Like, to me, it was like, there's no way. But the other thing was, at the time, I am probably the biggest person on the planet that hates school the most. I hated school with the biggest passion, like, ever. Because, like, I'm like, we're learning stuff I can do on a calculator. We're learning stuff about the 17, like, none of this matters. That's how I thought in high school. And I hated it so much. And so this was my thought process when I saw that guy trading, was like, okay, like, obviously he's doing it, so it can work. And there's all these videos of people doing it. So, like, it's possible. And in my head, I'm like, if I can just get this to work, and if I can just turn this $1,000 I have into $100,000 or $1 million, then I can drop out of high school and I don't have to go to school. Like, I hated school that much, and I was also so delusional at the time. I thought I could turn 1,000 into $1 million in like 3 months. But I was like, this is it. Like, I can just quit school if I get this working. So it was mainly like, get me out of school, get me out of this job, so I can just do this, and like, then I would be free.
Sorry for interrupting. Really quickly, I have a favor to ask though. 97% of you aren't actually subscribed to the podcast who listen on a regular basis. It's completely free to do so, and it really helps us continue to grow, improve our production, and ultimately get on bigger guests with time. So if you're enjoying the show today, please hit the subscribe button. It helps us out more than you know. And let's get back into the episode.
You were so motivated and convicted. I mean, even going to a bank with your mom and the bank teller saying, hey, you should actually look at this. A lot of teenagers right there and then would again quit because there's another block in the road, but you stayed convicted. Why did you stay convicted to day trading? I know you said you could make a lot of money. You thought 1,000 to $1 million in 3 months, but like, why day trading?
Well, day trading is one of the things where, and we've mentored so many people. I've talked with so many traders, and a lot of traders have this, I guess, like, ego. Like, they think they are a very good trader, even when they're just starting out. Because when you see a YouTube video, it looks very easy, right? Yeah. They show the very simple patterns that, like, a baby can identify in a chart, and you just see it work 2 times in a row. In your head, it's like, I have the golden ticket. This is gonna crush. That's why I thought, like, I could turn 1,000 to $1 million, because, like, that guy who made $2,000, I saw his strategy. It was, like, really easy, and I was like, if he can do it, why can't I do it? All you do is click buttons. Like, it's the same, physical amount of work. So, and if you have that mindset of like, I have this like ticket where I can very easily make a lot of money very quickly, you're pretty determined to make it work. So I was like, if I gotta go to the bank, wire this money, call them, do what I gotta do, like, let's make it happen.
Yeah, very interesting. Were there any early influences in your life that kind of shaped that mindset? Because I don't think a lot of young people have it, especially not at 16. I know personally, I looked at 8 different online businesses when I was 16 years old, and I didn't do any of them, but you stuck to the first thing that you found. So how did that mindset shape? Was there something early on that kind of developed it?
Not necessarily. I think I was just an entrepreneur kind of from the start. Like, even before that, I was like buying and flipping stuff on eBay. I think I was just very opportunistic. I would always see things and be like, there's a way to to make money from that. There's a way to leverage things. Just like an example, like one of my, we also made a TikTok about this, went crazy viral, but we had my brother one day, and this was like when I was doing the eBay flipping. I was doing more like jerseys, so I'd buy them from China and like drop ship them and stuff. But like when that was going on, my brother was like, "Hey, I found this like thing where LifeProof, like the LifeProof like phone cases and like OtterBox." He's like, "Well, you can. They have a what's it called, a warranty, and you can go on their website and type in that your LifeProof broke, and they'll send you a new one. You just have to pay the $6 shipping, right?" And my first thought is like, all right, you know where I'm going with this. So I did that, obviously not ethical, but whatever. I did that. They sent me one, and I was like, holy crap! I just got a $40 phone case for $6. Put it on eBay and sold it within like 2 days. I was like, all right, there's something here. So I ended up doing that a few more times. Then I started just like drop shipping it right from LifeProof. So I would just list it, somebody would buy it, and I would just like type in their address. Eventually they caught on, and they were like, because they added something into the input, because I do it so many times. They're like, hey, you need to like send proof of like the receipt, and also send proof that it's broken. So I kind of stopped after that. I mean, nowadays you could probably just AI everything and make it like pretty easy. Not saying you should do that, but so I was always doing stuff like that, and because I was doing stuff, I was like, and then I see this where it's like just an easy money making method. Like, cool, I'm all in on that.
Seemed like you were always a natural born hustler. What did you learn about selling on eBay and drop shipping that you translated to your early days in trading?
It honestly didn't really translate to anything in trading, other than like I was just very like, I was just a risk taker. I just didn't really care I was very aggressive with spending my money if it was on something that I thought could make me more money. I was very like stingy about like buying clothes or buying like, even today, like I don't have like any, supercars. I don't have any watches. Like I don't really care about spending my money on that stuff. But if I think there's a small chance that it could make me a lot more money, I'm very aggressive, and I like to go all in. So that's where like the eBay stuff came in, is like, I just see it working for a little bit. I'm like, well, if it works for one person, it has to work for more than one person. And so that was with trading. It was like, I have $1,000 to my name. Let me just throw all of that in the account because I'm going to make it work. So that was pretty much that.
Do you think that you have to take big risks to succeed in business?
100%. I think honestly, it's more of a, you ever like see like TED Talks or like motivational TikToks or whatever, and every rich person in the world is just like, you ask them like, what's the key to success? And everybody in the world says like, work hard. It's like the number one thing. And I think there's a little bit of that, but honestly, I think more of it is in the risk. Nobody talks about that. Everyone's like, work hard, and like, you can not, honestly, nowadays, not work that hard and still make a lot of money. You just have to be able to risk money that you have. A lot of people don't want to do that, right? They only have a little bit of savings. It's like, well, you want me to put it into this business that may not work. In fact, has a very low chance of working. In the upside that I do get something back, and it's going to take work. Like, that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do. So, but just being able to throw in the risk is huge.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've heard that from a lot of successful entrepreneurs. Back to trading though, you blew up a lot of accounts like a lot of young traders do. Why did you stay convicted, or how did you stay convicted in that process while you were still failing?
So that's the thing about trading is, so the first account, when I put $1,000 into that account, that offshore broker, I ended up losing it on day 3, or like $800 of it, pretty much the whole thing. I ended up waiting a month to tell my mom because I didn't want her to think I lost in 3 days. But it was 3 days, and so the first day I like made money, I made like $70. Second day I made like $150, right? And now I'm thinking in my head, this is also how like delusional I'm. Like, all right, 7% the first day, 10. I'm thinking like I can make 10% every day doing this. But third day comes around. I get in, and I was like penny stock scalping, so I'd get in and try and get out like a minute later, right as it popped up. And I remember I got in, it went up, and it went down. And you're supposed to get out relatively quick, right? You want to lose small too, instead of just instead of winning big. And I didn't get out. I got very emotional, and it kept going down, and I just didn't get out. And I thought it would come back up, and it just kept going down. So I got so emotional. But the reason why I kept funding accounts after that was because I knew the strategy still worked. It was just me being an idiot, me being emotional. So I'm like, if I can just fix that, right? As long as I stick to the strategy I had, it's gonna work. So, and that was kind of the basis for every account, was like, it's always like me being an idiot, or me just like being emotional and be like, if I just didn't do that, I'd be fine. So, and that's kind of why why it traps a lot of people in, and like a lot of traders don't give up. A lot of them stay at it for years. So that's why it was just all emotions.
It seems like you reflected on every single account and why you lost or made a mistake, and it was you. Why did you keep going though? Because I mean, you make a mistake 3 times, you're like, okay, maybe this isn't for me. 6 times, probably not for me. 12 times, and you still knew this was for you, and it was just you were the problem. So how did you identify these problems each time and keep continuing to go forward?
So in the early stages, probably in the first year, and it wasn't always like that. Around year 2 or 3, actually, I didn't think it was for me, and I didn't give up, but I started like, that's when I started doing more drop shipping, not eBay, but like I actually tried real drop shipping. I looked into Amazon FBA, I looked into everything else. But like in the first year, it was just a delusion of like, again, it didn't matter if I messed it up. It's like, I just like, all right, take a discipline course, right? Or you start like, I'm going to start doing cold showers. It's like, if I can do that, I can stay disciplined. It's like stuff like that. So I just like figured I could make it work. But then, yeah, after like 2.5 years of it, and I still wasn't really there, that's when I was like, okay, I'll keep trying because I like it. And I had a huge passion too. It's like, if you have a passion for sports or whatever, I fell in love with the game and reading charts. But I was just like trying other businesses at the time as well to kind of hedge if it wasn't going to work out. So it wasn't always like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious what trading specifically taught you about both your own psychology of yourself, but also psychology of other people.
Yeah, I think it actually turned me into a natural contrarian. Like when a lot of people go one way, I kind of like think the other, and it's not always a good thing too. Like even in the early stages of when AI started to be huge, I was very contrarian. I'm like, no, like I'm not gonna invest in it, I'm not gonna learn it. Like, it's maybe it'll be good, but whatever. And that ended up being something that now I'm invested in, and it's incredible. But I think I just noticed that there's like when everyone's doing something, it's usually not the thing you should do, and that's more in a gambling sense. And it's also very easy to spot in stocks. Like even today, one of my it's funny, one of the greatest tests that I do to know what the market's going to do is I just ask either a poll on Twitter. I'm like, do you think the market's bullish or bearish? And if 70% or more say bullish, I should probably short the market. It's literally the easiest thing I've done to like make money. But even I'll ask like my brother, or someone who's like an average like quote investor who just like they follow the market. They're not a trader, but they just like. And I remember he would like, it's like whenever they reach out, if someone reaches out to me, like a friend or family, like, oh, S&P hit 600, super bullish, like whatever. That's when I know like, all right, a top is probably in. I have like screenshots. I've like tweeted about this. Like it's happened multiple times. So I think for me, it's just taught me that like, if everyone's really greedy, if everyone's trying to sell, that's when you should buy. And most people fall victim of their emotions, really.
You seem very practical in your approach. How did you switch up your system and be more practical in your trading to take away that emotion?
Yeah, I like to think of myself as a very logical person. I try and stay away from my emotions. And so in trading, I realized that Even it's funny. I realized that even though my emotions were an issue, really the way to become profitable was having an edge and a strategy. And I always think it back to like the casino example, right? Like if you're the owner of a casino, right? You're usually not stressing out, right? Even if someone comes in and wins the jackpot, like you're not gonna sit there and like be like, oh my god, I might have to shut down the casino, right? Because you know that like your games win over time. It's like mathematical. And so I started thinking in that approach with trading. I'm like, well, if I can just have a mathematical edge, doesn't matter if I lose, right? It's going to make money. And so I started thinking of trading and coming up with a strategy and really forming like how can I be like the house and just like, you know, take as many trades as possible and just let the edge keep playing. And that really is actually when I started to become profitable.
That's very insightful. I'm curious how you've been able to stay so focused on your path that you're on right now. Obviously, you're started trading, now you're running a business related to trading, but you're still focused on trading. And especially in a world where AI is dominating the headlines, there's constant geopolitical chaos going on. There's 16-year-olds driving Lamborghinis down the street, and I'm sure you see it in Miami. So how do you actually stay focused on your lane and not get distracted and move to a different domain?
I don't know. I think I'm just like I listen to a lot of podcasts. I like to listen to a lot of people who are smarter than me, and a lot of what they have done or what people say is like shiny object syndrome. And I just, you know, especially in the trading space, I don't know if you know prop firms, but that was a huge thing that came across because a lot of people would start them. They're pretty easy to start, and people buy these like crazy. Like you have people throwing their last dollar in them. They'll buy like 20 accounts over a 6-month period. It's insane. They'll spend thousands of dollars on it. I remember at the time when I was doing my own trading, we had the education as well and the mentorships, and I was thinking of starting one. And I'm sure it would have crushed. But I remember thinking like, okay, it's like I wanted to minimize headache, and I figured if I bring that on, like that's basically starting a whole nother business, and it's going to be really hard to continue to grow my current one. That's actually why I ended up selling the mentorship, is because like I started the bot, and we can get into that, but like running two companies at the same time is extremely hard. Now the way I think about it is there's ways to do it, and I didn't do it the right way. But it's harder than one. And I also knew at the same time that with my trading and with the mentorship business I was in, I wasn't even close to where it could have been. So I knew like if I just stick to this and figure it out, it's going to be a lot easier to go from 10 to 100 than go from 0 to 1. So that was kind of my thought process and helped me stay out of a lot of, you know, distractions.
You mentioned listening to a lot of podcasts. What are your top 3 favorite podcasts that help you stay educated and sharp?
I listen to Hormozy's podcast quite a bit. My First Million is one I like to. They're pretty insightful. I can't think of another one. More just like YouTube videos, but those were kind of the main ones I would listen to.
Yeah, interesting. Me and Colton were talking about My First Million. I need to watch it. I came across them yesterday for the first time, so we're going to study how they've grown so successfully on YouTube as a duo podcast host. But looking forward a little bit, now that we got some context on your sort of trading journey, you said before we got on and clicked to record that you grew up in upstate New York. Now you live in Miami. I'm curious what that change in environment has taught you about life, business, success.
Yeah, it was insane. The biggest thing it taught me, honestly, is networking. Like, I didn't really think of it as a huge lever, but I remember like a year or two ago, I was kind of reflecting, and this was when we had maybe 12 people on the team at the company, and like more than half of them came from a friend of a friend. And a lot of those friends of a friend were people that I met in Miami, like the first year I was there. And it made me realize, like, you know, people will like spend money on networking. They will travel to places just to network, or they will like move their whole family or move their whole like whatever over. I think there actually is a lot of value in that. I didn't used to think there was. But now, like when I think about people I want to hire, that's actually why I'm starting to build out my personal brand and my network, and why I'm trying to do that is because like that's the best funnel for finding good people to work with. So in my head, I'm like, now like I really only want to hire people that I know, or an agency who does recruitment from someone who I know. And that's how I found, one of the recruiting companies I work with to find talent is like, the owner is a friend of a friend. And so just to even have a little bit of trust just makes it so much easier for me to want to work with them and bring them on. And then the other main part is like just being in Miami. It's just like everyone here, like you're kind of just forced to spend more money. It's like if you go out and have, like I was even thinking about it too, like my dad, we were talking about it, he was like so surprised at like the prices for getting into clubs. It would be like $100-$200 just to get into a club. And he was like, just to get in, like not even for the drinks, right? And that's like, some nights it goes at like $400, $500, and that's like a GA ticket. Let alone, you start getting a table, and then you have dinner the night before or the day of, and then sometimes you gotta. It's like you're spending just so much more money being here, which forces you to like, all right, I got to make more money. So it definitely motivated me for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. My follow-up question is something we say almost every episode on Real Leverage, which is your net worth. Your network is your net worth. Do you believe that's true?
Yes, I do think it is important, but I don't think it's necessary. I think like for hiring, like I said, it just builds a lot of trust, right? Could I have hired a pretty good team without using my network? Of course. But does it make it a lot easier? 100%. And also I see it as a good hedge, right? I've met so many entrepreneurs in the space, and I've met so many where I knew if I lost everything right now and I was like absolute dead broke, $0, and I want to get a job, I could call up a good chunk of them and they would give me a job at like sales or like writing copy or or whatever the skill is. So I think it's just good to have that. And also like, yeah, I would say it's good, but it's not necessary. Yeah.
When you first moved to Miami, did you have any fear or doubts about moving to a new city, not knowing anyone, and kind of building yourself up?
100%. I was super nervous. I didn't know how I'd meet anyone. I got very lucky. I was part of this networking group. It was a Discord networking group, and I was a little bit active in it. I actually traveled to like Portugal and Greece for like 2 months before I moved to Miami with two guys who were in that group. But after that, before I went to Miami, someone in that group DM'd me on Instagram, and he was like, hey, I'm doing a yacht in Miami. Do you want to come? And literally the first day I got there, before I even moved in, was the day of it. And I went and I met like 7 or like 5 other dudes who were all entrepreneurs in the space. And I kind of just built my network from there, meeting people from them. So I got pretty lucky, but even just being in Miami, like walking down Brickell, like you're bound to meet, especially at night nowadays. Holy crap! You walk down Brickell at night, and there's multiple it's like hard to miss like a streamer just like walking around or doing a stream. If different 3 years ago, but now it's crazy. So it's definitely like an easy place to, if you try and you just like walk outside, you'll meet people.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially being in a place like Miami. We know there's a lot of really successful people there, but for the people who are stuck in a different environment, they're in a small town somewhere and they're not quite at that level to move to Miami. I'm curious how you've leveraged growing a social media following to build a network virtually for those people who can't do it in person in places like Miami.
Yeah. So I started with everything on Twitter. I was extremely self-conscious, and I never wanted to show my face on camera. And so that's why I started with Twitter or X, what do you want to call it? Because it was all just typing. You didn't have to do any video or any photo. And I actually didn't even start with my name. I started with a brand, and that's where I came up with like Freedom Team Trading, or I think it was something different actually at the time. But I started doing that. I just started posting my trades. And then on Twitter, I saw that people were starting to do threads. And threads are just like long, it's like 10 tweets in a row basically. And they were doing them about trading, and I saw they got a lot of retweets at the time. And so I decided to try one. And I got very lucky because the first one I did really well. It got a lot of views and got me a lot of followers. And I was at like 2,000 followers at the time. But that's when I started to realize, like, okay, if I actually, and the thread took me a while to make too. It was the first time I like tried to actually like put work into content of like, let me sit down for like an hour and actually write threads and get these images and put them in and make it like actually valuable. And it worked. And then I learned basically how to make a thread of like how to actually make a thread go viral. And it's like the hook and how to know what to say in the hook and what the image should be and what the topic should be about. And then I made like a few here and there, and I saw that some of them were working and they were working really well. Cause I mean, now I think it's harder. At the time, like when you had retweets and your followers actually saw like what you posted, it was easy. It was very easy. So then what I did, I was like, I remember at the time I was kind of being lazy. I was doing like one thread a week, and I was like, okay, let me just do one every day for a month. Let me just give myself a challenge. I don't do a lot of these, like, I don't like to call them challenges, but like mini challenges for myself. I don't do them a lot, but when I do, and I stick to them. And I was like, all right, let me just, like, I've been a little lazy. Let me just do this for a month every day. And in that month, I grew from, I think it was at like 4,000 or 5,000 at the time, and I grew to 40,000 followers. And that's when I also started, after that, started monetizing it. But all I did was just like study what the top people were doing to get views, and I copied it. And I would just spend time like, you know, I think in the early stages, most of your time should be spent just like learning what to do instead of actually doing it. And then you slowly transition to flipping that and doing 20% learning, 80% actually doing it. So that's what I did.
You have that pattern recognition skill from being a trader as well. Curious, what was the mindset shift when you became more confident to be on camera and teach traders all over the world?
I mean, I don't even think I was still confident on camera. I was in, so I was only on Twitter. This is when I went to Greece. So it was actually right before I moved to Miami. Or when I went to Portugal, sorry. And I went with this other guy named Nick Setting. He blew up now. But he, at the time, was doing YouTube videos to sell. He had like a setting course or whatever it was. And he told me, he's like, hey, you should hop on YouTube. Like, it's just, it builds more trust. It's another platform. And so I ended up doing it. And my first YouTube video was, now looking back at it, was awful. Like it was so easy to tell looking at it. I was so uncomfortable and so nervous and like shaking when I spoke. And like, it's funny to look back on, but I just built it over time. I threw it out there, and I think also what made it easy, because like I really cared what people thought of me. That's why like throughout all of like college, I didn't make any videos about it, and I only did like a anonymous face on Twitter. But once I actually moved out of college, and because I went to Greece like literally a week after I graduated, I was like, okay, well I'm done. All those college people are not gonna like see me anymore. It's like I'm in a whole new world, literally a whole new environment, like Greece or Portugal. Like I don't even know how the language is. So I don't care. It's like, you know, no one that I know is actually going to see it. And I just kind of slowly started doing videos from there and kind of grew it.
Interesting. It seems like your environment has kind of shaped you in a sense, going from upstate New York to starting doing content, showing your face, you know, over in Europe to now moving to Miami and building everything you're building there. So I'm curious what that sort of transition and the importance of changing your environment to sort of level up in life and what you've learned regarding that.
I think it's so important. I didn't realize how important it was. Like and the way I think about it is like, this is a crazy example, but I don't even know. Well, I'm just gonna say it. It doesn't matter. Like if imagine you grew up in, and I'm terrible with memory and dates, but imagine you grew up in the 1700s, 1800s, when slavery was a huge thing, right? And you grow up, and let's say your parents are a slave owner. And you have to sit, and you grew up like that's normal and that's what life should be, right? Now in our heads we like to think that we would never think we'd be okay with that. But if that's all you're taught and that's what everyone around you is doing, that's probably what you would believe in. So when I start to think of like, all right, who do I actually want to surround myself with? Because I'm probably going to start believing whatever they're saying. And so I had to kind of transition from like, not like getting rid of my friends, but just like trying to find a group of people who are all about like business, because that was my passion at the time. And they would kind of help shape like what I actually think. I think even to this day, like that's a lot of where we get all of our beliefs from, is what people tell us.
You mentioned changing your environment. Did you struggle with kind of not leaving your old friends behind, but shifting into new friends and new environments and trying to maintain those old relationships? Or can you walk me through that a little more?
Um, honestly, no. I didn't have issues because I started to, like, I just worked so much in high school and college, and I didn't go out and party. Like, for me, it was just like, it was just so much more fun to like work on a business and like than to like get drunk. So I just said no to so many things. I just like stopped basically. I don't want to say having fun because I had a lot of fun building the businesses, but I stopped like going out and getting drunk, and I did it occasionally, of course, but I just stopped saying no. So like for me to like then, for those friends that I had, it's like, well, Jordan never goes out with us anyway, so it's like it's whatever. And for me to like now, meet new friends who are like, okay, yeah, dude, let's just like grab a cafe or grab a freaking coffee and like talk about business instead of like let's go to the club. It was kind of like a huge like, all right, that's the type of person I want to be surrounded with. But I still love going to the club. I'll put that there. I do once in a while. It's always fun to
It's
do.
the Miami way,
Gotta
right?
relax.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I'm curious, back on the note of social media, what's the single biggest thing that you've gained from building on social media, whether it's monetarily or a relationship? I'm just curious.
It was definitely money. Um, I mean, that was kind of why well, there's also the dopamine, right? Like when you start gaining followers and it's slowly there, and then you hit a thread that pops off and you gain like 1,000 overnight, and like it feels really good. It feels super fun. Um, but also the money, right? So what happened was when I grew to 40,000 followers, because I saw other people on Twitter who were trading were selling Discord groups and selling mentorships. That was like a huge thing. So I saw that was happening. I knew if I got a decent following, I could start selling them. So I had 40,000 followers. And then this was so dumb of me. I did a giveaway with this other big guy where we gave away like 500 bucks. And that gave me like 9,000 followers over like 2 days. But it was just so dumb because all of them like unfollowed. None of them actually cared about my content. Anyway, so at the time I had like close to 50,000. And at that point I was like, okay, let me try and sell a course. So I made a course. I hired a copywriter who was also on Twitter. It was someone who actually DM'd me asking if I needed one. So I was like, sure. I paid him like, I don't know, 100 bucks, 200 bucks to write me a landing page and design me a thing. And so all I had was a website with this guy wrote like, a few paragraphs of like landing page copy, and then a button to buy on Gumroad at the time, which crazy to look back and think of how many other platforms like that exist. But at the time it was Gumroad, and I sold it for I think it was $297, so like 300 bucks. And in 48 hours I made 20 grand. And that to me was like, wow, because I was in college, I didn't have much money at the time. And that was a huge point of like, all right, there's a lot of money to be made here. So that kind of started me making money from it and then growing the business from there.
Other than you having a big follower count of 40 to 50,000 followers, were there any other indications that gave you confidence that you were ready to teach new traders how to trade and make money?
Yeah, it was really just that the threads were blowing up, right? Because and they were all like educational threads about like what I was doing. It wasn't like about another trader or like a news or whatever it was. It was like, here's the strategy I did that has made me this amount of money, or maybe this money on this trade. Here's what it is. And if it blows up, they obviously find it valuable, right? They're saving it. They're sending comments, asking me about it. They're in my DMs asking me about it. So I wasn't quite like, I wasn't making lots of money trading. I think at the time when I started doing that, I was like still break even or maybe slightly losing money trading. But it doesn't matter, right? If what I'm giving them is value and they like it, if there's something for them to learn, then they're willing to pay for it. So that was kind of the key is like, all right, there's obviously something that I know of. And at the time also, I was like 2 years in. So I had like a decent amount of years of experience doing something.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious to go a bit more into your business. Obviously, you've done courses, coaching. You have your option platform as well. So I want you to walk us through a little bit more about what you're actually doing now in business. But the question is, what have you learned about running a business that you didn't learn just trading?
So much. I mean, like trading's the only job where it's actually funny. It's the only job that I know of where you don't provide value to any other person or thing, right? Like literally,
Yeah.
I could stare at a wall. I could be in my room, talk to no one ever, make money, and like nobody would know. It's not like I provide a value if I make money trading. Like the stock I'm trading, like they don't know what's going on. They don't. So, but starting a business is definitely different, right? Now that it's a very people involved environment, and especially when we grew, there was so much I had to learn, like how to hire, how to build a relationship with an employee, how to make sure they're doing a good job. There's so many mini skills I had to learn, how to delegate. So it definitely was a transition for sure.
From being an isolated trader to managing teams, what did you learn in that frame? Like it's difficult to go from, it's just yourself and you're the only one providing for yourself in these trades to now you're running a team of, I think you mentioned at 12 at one point. Can you walk me through that a little more?
Yeah. So we had, so even to this day, I don't think managing and growing teams is my strong suit. I still think it's something I need to work on. But at the time, it was easy. So I started out. It was easy when I started out because, well, before I started the mentorship, I actually had a software which, is a rabbit hole we can go down. But that was basically I needed moderators for that. So I was basically giving them free access to the software to be moderators. So I had 5 people join. That was kind of the first of me actually learning how to get people interested. And then one of the moderators I ended up hiring to be the first coach for my mentorship, and then he ended up growing from there. But so I just kind of learned by doing. I would just talk to them, and I'm a very straightforward person. So I'm like, hey, here's how much you get paid. Here's what I want you to do. It's like, do you want to do it? And they're like, sure. I'm like, all right, you're on. So it was pretty straightforward. And then from there, like I said, because I think growing wasn't really my strong suit. So a lot of our team was sales. We peaked at 50 something people on the team. It's less than that now, but it was mainly sales. And so we would just once I had a sales manager on and he did a lot of the hiring, then I didn't really do much of it. But also a lot of the people I would hire was I'd hire a lot of VAs. And that's much different than hiring a salesperson. But again, a lot of it is just I listen to podcasts. And he's like, well, here's how I hire. One of them was from My First Million. It was something like Sean said. And he said, I like to give all my potential hires a work trial. And I never knew what a work trial was. But I started doing that and I learned what it was. And it's a game changer. You just have them actually do work before you hire them to see if they're actually good at the work. And it was... So I just kind of learned by doing that stuff and then installed that in how I actually hire people now.
Yeah, interesting. Looking back at your entire journey in your life and in business, is there any point where you really considered just quitting and going back to a normal life?
Never a normal life. No. I think once I tasted freedom and tasted not having a job, there was no shot I can go back to that. There was definitely a point where our team, like I said, when we peaked at the amount of people we had, it was a very complicated business. So many moving parts, very high revenue, but very high expense business, where I was like, you know what? It would actually be really nice if it was just me and maybe like one other person. And like, even if we were making less profit, it's just way less of a headache. So definitely was a point where I was like, that sounds a lot more fun than where I'm at now. 'Cause I do think a lot of it too is ego. I wanted to just say I had a big team of people and we scaled to the point where we could say that. And then once I got there, I was like, this is crazy. We don't need like half of these people. And like this business is like, we're just going down in margin like every month. So now that I'm starting this new company, I'm thinking of it in a way of like, how can we scale while also not having it be extremely complicated?
Yeah, that makes sense. Seems like you're taking lots of lessons away with everything you do, all the wins, all the failures and stuff. So on the note of failure, I'm curious, what is the biggest failure that you've ever had through your whole journey in trading and in business?
I think it was, it probably would have been one of the trades I've done. There was also a business decision I made, which was not smart and probably cost us at least 150 to 200 grand, not including the opportunity cost, like if we didn't do that. So, but the real, like, I had a trade that was so, it's funny. Every trade I've been so confident on, like the most confident in the world, has always lost. It's always when I'm the most confident. So there was one that I was very confident in, and I ended up losing like 50 grand on it, which was a lot of money, and I definitely put way too much into it. But I definitely learned from that, and I definitely am not like doing that again. So it definitely kind of helped me be smarter with my risk as I move forward.
How do you navigate failure now? You've failed 12 accounts, you failed with some hiring and opportunity costs. How do you navigate failure now?
I just think it's, I almost want to fail faster because I saw like, you know, that like meme of like the pickaxe like grinding at the thing and trying to get the diamonds and he's right next to it, but he turns away. It's like, that's how I think is like, because like in order to get to, it's almost like with dating. This is what someone I heard a while ago, and I'm in an incredible relationship now, but at the time when I was single and someone told me this, it hit so well, and I was like, if I told you you're only 7 no's away from finding your wife, how quickly would you start asking girls out? Right?
Yeah.
And that's how I think about like everything is like, it's literally just a finite number of obstacles until you're at there. So the faster you hit them, it's just literally the faster you grow. So that's just how I think is like, all right, if I fail, it's like, whatever. And also there's so many, especially in the business, so many things I've tried that have failed. Like when I started learning about webinars, I launched a webinar. I spent 3 days on it. And it like 3 days, I still like, when you think of like hard work, like you always after I finished that webinar, I was like, okay, now I know what hard work is. It was one of those moments where like I thought I knew what it was. Like this was like literally 12 hours straight for 3 days. Like I didn't eat like crazy, and it flopped and nobody bought it after the webinar. And that was like, it sucked, but I'm like, what else am I gonna do? I'm not gonna do a webinar. I'm gonna go back to trying this, and then that ended up growing. So it's just like what you need to keep growing.
That's awesome. Me and Colton have adopted the same mindset, especially with the podcast. It's like, let's just race to 100 episodes of the podcast and it'll be significantly more successful than it is now. It's the same thing with my short form on social media. So it's interesting to hear you've kind of had the same approach of just try, and eventually it will work out. And thanks, Jordan, for all the value you've provided today. I know we're approaching our time. We leave every single guest with one simple but powerful question for our audience, and it is, if you could leave one last thing for our audience today, what would that be?
One last thing. Ooh, I don't know. Like advice or what?
Anything, man. Advice. Usually it's advice. Take your time as well. We got a little clock going. We keep track of how long it takes everybody to answer. It takes a while sometimes.
It's a competition every time, so.
Okay. Advice. I think. So here's what I'll say. 2 days ago, I actually deleted all social media on my phone. I deleted TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And I still use it on my desktop if I need to post stuff. So I still use it to produce content, but I deleted all of it. And the reason I did that is because I realized that whenever I scroll on social media, I'm always comparing myself to other people. And I also think of like, there's standards in life that people will kind of put you in. And they will not put you in, but like, you should have a nice house, and you should have a family, and you should have kids and a dog and a white picket fence, and you should have whatever. And some people want that, some people don't. And what I realize is that like there's no wrong way. And I kind of look at Hormozy like this, and I'm not really like him in this aspect, but he was like, I remember he talks a lot about like, he's a very hard worker, and he was like, well, I probably should take some time to relax or go on vacation, but I don't want to. I just want to sit here and work on my business, and that's all I want to do. And everyone else is going to be like, dude, that's not smart, that's not healthy, that's not right. But he's happy doing that. And so I would say is like, I kind of just tried to push what everybody thought of like what life should be. And it's like, dude, if you want to sit in your house and play video games all day, like, do that. And if that makes you genuinely really happy, like, who cares what anyone else says? And finding what you actually love to do and like just doing it, I think is key. And there's no like wrong way to live. So that's what I would leave it at.
That's
I
awesome.
think that's amazing advice.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on today. Anyone who's still listening, check Jordan out. Links in the description below. Go interact with him. Make sure you subscribe to the Real Leverage podcast as well. Episodes coming out every few days on here moving forward. So thanks, everyone, for watching. And thanks again, Jordan, for your time.